Hello, welcome back to Art Theories. Today we're using a green screen and I am drinking a green smoothie. Kale, banana, coconut water. It is delicious. I'm on a bit of a holistic flex right now. Yeah, it is a flex. I could have drank this any time of day, but I chose to drink it during filming. Despite all the greenness, today we are talking about The White Cube, an excellent book published in 1976 by Irish writer Brian O'Doherty. Before we go any further, let's head to the White Cube space ourselves. Okay, cool. So, O'Doherty points out that the White Cube gallery space, you will know it, you've probably been to one, kind of awkward vibes. It's got a religious quality about it. It's kind of like, you walk in, the doors are really big and really heavy, like a church door, and you have to be quiet, and you have to kind of respect the art, you kind of have to be a bit solemn, like just doing your thing. You can't shout. There's all these like dogmatic rules, and you kind of have to like believe in the power of the art on display, or at least that's what they kind of want you to do. Whether you do or not, up to you. There's no windows. The gallery is kind of cut off from the outside world. And the space is transformative in a way. Any object brought into that space, or person brought into that space, has the potential to become art. Kind of cool. O'Doherty goes so far as to argue that the White Cube is in fact one of the greatest innovations of the modernist tradition. Whatever the modernist tradition is, a long story, we're not going to get into that now, but basically it's a pretty big deal. And O'Doherty in this book shows us that the White Cube space, far from being a neutral zone where you can kind of focus on the art, is actually an ideological battleground where the nature and the meaning of art is being fought for. But first, we need to go about 100 years back in time. Ooh la la, bonjour, salut, nous sommes en Paris. Okay, so we're in Paris and we're in the Salon. The Salon is like what the galleries used to be like. Before the White Cube existed, paintings and sculptures were kind of exhibited something like this. They were really stacked high and wide. And frames were quite a big deal. You see a lot of frames back there. Painting used to be illusion based, and what I mean by that is that it's kind of like it's like a window you could look through. So like you looking through at your painting, and it could be like a field or another room or a biblical scene, whatever. But it kind of had that like illusion of as if you could reach into it, or crawl into that space. It was like a window. Paintings were like a window into a new space. You get what I mean? And when painting was illusion based, frames were really handy because it kind of was like, this is where the illusion was, this is your window, and this is the border of that illusion, and it means that the viewer is not going to get mixed up between your painting that's there and his painting, which is the next guy's painting, which is there. So frames were huge. People love frames everywhere. We still have frames now, but kind of died down a little bit compared to them. And eventually, for reasons I'm not going to talk about here, painting sort of stopped being so illusion-based, and slowly over the course of, 50-ish years, maybe a bit more, painting went abstract. Illusion was abandoned, and paintings were more and more admired for their surface quality. So as this happened, the frames kind of dropped away, and they were replaced by like an abundance of white wall space. So paintings now needed breathing space. Kind of like the margin left on a photograph. So paintings entered into a kind of conversation with the other paintings in the room and with the room itself. And with that, the White Cube was born. This also led to the modern phenomenon, sometimes known as border warfare, during exhibition setups, as artists would fight for their artistic Lebensraum. I've had a few of these border wars myself, and I think exhibition setups would make great reality TV. You heard it here first. In many ways, abstract painting was similar to salon painting. It was highly commercial, it needed big walls, big paintings, big collectors, big pockets. The writer describes abstract expressionism as the ultimate capitalist art. And artists began to see the white cube as an ideologically charged space, with lots of unspoken rules, objects that are wildly expensive, snobbish audiences. It was designed to be an intellectually inaccessible space, catered to elite tastes. The writer says, never was a space designed to accommodate the prejudice and enhanced self-image of the upper and middle classes so efficiently codified. And artists of this period felt frustrated at the codified politics of the white cube space, and out of this frustration, new genres of art were born, genres which tried to escape commodification, escape bourgeoisie incorporation, escape the white cube, even to escape the clutches of capitalism. I'm talking about genres such as performance art, installation, environments, land art, conceptualism. O'Doherty goes on to describe to the reader how a radical tradition of environment-based gestures was imposed on the gallery space by artists as a reaction to its ideological nature. Obviously, the first one, getting in there nice and early, is Monsieur Marcel Duchamp. In two separate exhibitions, Duchamp decided that he was not going to exhibit on the wall or on a podium, but instead was going to exhibit in and around the gallery space. In 1938, he hung, I think, 1,200 absurdly heavy bags of coal on the roof of the gallery space, really cramping the room and blocking the light. And then in 1942, he weaved a mile of string in and around the gallery space. How he convinced the curator and the other artists to let him do it, I have no idea. Clearly he had a lot of clout at the time and put that to work. Both artworks set a precedent for radical gestures testing the limits of the gallery space. They involved an alteration of the space, they were uncommodifiable, and intentionally provocative. In 1957, Yves Klein presented La Vide, or The Void. Literally an empty white cube space. Nothing in there. Loads of people turned up to the opening. It was a massive success. So Albert Camus, one of the French existentialist writers, attended the opening, and he wrote in the guest book, "With the void, full of power." And it doesn't tell you much. It's a bit mystical, but what it does tell you is the Parisian cool kids liked it. They were there and they liked it. Good to know. I think that's good to know. Anyway, 2 years later, in 1959, in the exact same gallery, someone called Arman, I don't think he has a first or second name, this artist, I think his name is literally just Arman, presented Les Poubelles, the trash. He filled the gallery space to the brim with rubbish, to the point where no one could enter and viewers were forced to look into the gallery space through the window. I don't know about you, but I think there's a beautiful poetry to the fact that Yves Klein presented the empty space and then Arman presented the completely full to the point where you can't enter it space. And it was the same space. There's a kind of poetry to that. Anyway, oh my gosh. Okay, and next, in 1968, and this is probably one of my favourite artworks of all time, Argentinian artist Graciela Carnivale locked her visitors inside the gallery. I said that correctly. She invited the viewers into the space, and once they were all in, she left and she put a padlock on the door and then just left. So the viewers were then stuck in the gallery space. Well, they were stuck, but there was a way out. Basically, there was a glass wall, one big glass wall, and I do believe the artist left a hammer. The viewers had to realise that they were locked in, that no one was coming to unlock the door. Then one of them had to eventually pick up the hammer and use it to smash the window and get out. The smashing of the window, their escape, and the legendary story that surrounds it became the artwork. And last one I'm going to mention, in 1969, Christo and Jean-Claude, despite much resistance from the Chicago Fire Department, wrapped the Museum of Contemporary Art Chicago in 10,000 square miles of tarpaulin, testing the limits of what society and the gallery will permit an artist to do in the name of contemporary art. completely shutting down the museum for a large stretch of time. No one could get in or out, including the PR team, including the sales team, including the gallerists, the curators, the directors, blah, blah, blah. The whole museum was shut down for the period that it was wrapped up. Yeah, so this tradition is totally rad. It's almost heroic in its resistance to capitalism's kind of pull of commodification. These gestures have been totally incorporated into the canon and are celebrated by the institutions in which they took place and the establishment in general. This may be the white cube, and maybe also capitalism's, greatest strength, its ability to absorb and recommodify rebellions. And, you know, I can kind of relate to these radical sentiments. That's kind of why I loved being a performance artist so much. Like, your work does not fit in the gallery space comfortably, and it's just very, like, antagonistic, and you don't really get on with the curator, and you don't really get on with the other artists or the director, and that kind of intentional being awkward is just something I really love and respect. And it's not the room or the space itself that's the problem, it's what it signifies. Your work or you are just, you're sat there in somebody else's temple, you're a pawn in their game, and your value is in their hands. And that's something I found really hard and really disempowering, is the fact that they either decide whether or not they like you, and then they attach value to your work. I like to set my own value, and I like it when other artists set their own value and just do their thing and kind of don't really pay attention to that authority, because it's not really about them anyway. They're just trying to make it about them. That might have been a bit cryptic, but there you go. So when I left art school, I went and worked in a couple of White Cube gallery spaces, just really low level work in those spaces, and like interning and being a waiter and a barman. And the word I would use to describe those spaces is feudal. And like, I seriously mean that. It's something I thought about a lot. Like, they are feudal spaces. One person is the king or queen, and they make all the rules. They set taste. It's a very steep pyramid of hierarchy, and whatever their opinion is just goes. Because the thing with art is that, like, obviously everyone's got an opinion. No one's necessarily right. But in those spaces, one person is right, and if you disagree, you are wrong. And it's just horrible. Like, I don't even know how to describe it, but they're just not nice places to be. What I remember from those spaces is just how steep the hierarchy is, and how it felt to be on the very bottom of that hierarchy. And those experiences gave me a really valuable insight into the white cube, cultural elitism, and the commodification of art, and how those spaces function. And what I really liked about this book is that it was able to offer me a kind of a theoretical underpinning to those experiences. It was really fascinating, and something more, it also shows you the history of how that came to be, and also a radical tradition of artists who are actively trying to undermine what the white cube has come to represent and come to be. However, there is a kind of sadness to this book, and that sadness is that, like, despite all the problems articulated with the white cube space, and despite this radical tradition of artists trying to undermine or destabilize or find alternatives to the white cube, this book was written in the 1970s, so that's 50 years ago, and the white cube is still the modus operandi. It still reigns supreme, and to be honest with you, I don't really think there's a viable alternative way of looking at art that could go mainstream right now and challenge the white cube space. So I think we'll probably have it for another 50 years.